Hello everyone and welcome to day 21 of our blog series on John's Gospel, looking at relationships. Our link passage today is from Mark chapter 10 verses 35 to 45, which I'll read for you shortly. Here where we glimpse Jesus' own relationship with his disciples, which was not itself without its difficulties, but where we also see Jesus overturn the traditional image of a ruler. Biblical kings and Roman emperors had usually ruled as despots with absolute power and authority, based on subjugation and fear of their subjects. Jesus redefined this stereotype in his interactions with his disciples, emphasising humility throughout, that he was a servant king who had come to serve, not to be self-serving. Let's read the passage from Mark. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." "You don't know what you're asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with." That's a mouthful. "But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." When the 10 others heard this, they were indignant with James and John. Jesus called them all together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first will be last, and must be a slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." James and John asked Jesus what he could do for them, and whilst Jesus did not forcibly rebuke their impudence, he asked them what they wanted him to do. In verse 33 we see Jesus had foretold his death for a third time. "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests, who will condemn him and to death and deliver him to the Gentiles. But on the third day he will rise again." A lot for them to take in, you might think, but this appears to have gone totally over the disciples' heads. James and John are asking Jesus for places at his side, but Jesus gently reminds them that his rule is based on humility, and that many who place themselves first will be last, and the last first, as we see in verse 31. He restated this in verse 43, that whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be a slave to all. Jesus showing his sacrificial service and life is the model his disciples needed to follow, both then and now. But they just didn't always get it. Mainly because Jesus was rather atypical to the Messiah they'd been expecting, and the strict rules they were used to. It was as if their spiritual focus had been in one place for so long that they could not refocus initially to see him clearly. In chapter 10 verse 46, Jesus heals the blind man Bartimaeus, and had performed the same miracle before, as though trying to emphasise to the disciples that they had failed themselves to see him clearly. The relationship between Jesus and his 3 main disciples, Peter, James and John, is interesting. It's a little like a PM in his inner cabinet, indeed often excluding the other disciples. But was there further intrigue? Some have commented that were James and John in their request to sit at Jesus' side actually trying to exclude Peter, almost in competition with each other. Jesus asked Bartimaeus the same question he asked James and John: "What do you want me to do for you?" But with his sight restored, Bartimaeus followed Jesus, contrasting rather with the unseeing eyes of some of his more long-standing disciples, such as James and John. Indeed, they're trying to get Jesus, in a sense, to fit in with their plans rather than vice versa. They've ignored his predictions of death and have heard what they want to hear. Echoes for some Christians and churches today, perhaps. We all ask Jesus for things in our prayer life, so maybe we're not always so different. The ironic thing about James and John's request is that the 2 people who eventually did position themselves to Jesus' left or right were 2 robbers at the crucifixion. The disciples here appear to be often competing for a privileged place at Jesus' side. The others were angry, but this is where, at a critical point and where it could have all fallen apart, Jesus takes them to one side and tells them about the kingdom of God and how it works. Honour will go to those who serve, not to those who want, demand or expect. Our mission is to serve all at the request of one master, Jesus himself. Jesus is the ultimate relational expert, but he doesn't make it straightforward. There will be a price to pay for following him through. The final sacrifice will be his, not ours. We shouldn't judge the disciples perhaps too harshly. In modern times, the wrong things are always worshipped in pursuit of those false idols, money, power, and fame. Jesus called us to a new way of living, service over power. We need to make it our focus and keep reiterating it, that love is in and of God. This is a central tenet of the Christian faith. We keep reiterating it, but it's the power of love, selfless acts of kindness, building healthy, multi-dimensional relationships through meeting people at their point of need, a duty of individuals and the church. It's what Tom Wright called the church's primary vocation. We saw much evidence of this in lockdown, where people didn't just focus and look after number one. They became relational, they listened and cared, opened their eyes as Bartimaeus had his eyes opened, to following Jesus' way, which is the number one really worth looking after. Have a good day, everyone. Be relational. Bye for now.